drama, baby. The Edmonton Oilers, oh goodness sakes me, down 2-0 against the Boston Bruins, breaking the curse that is this team series against each other. 8 straight it had been where the opposing team wins in the other's barn. And well, today the Oilers snapped that, an evening which was filled with a lifeless first period, a come-to-life second period for the Edmonton Oilers, and then a third period in which not much was really breaking the Oilers' way until, oh yeah, it did, for Connor McDavid to tie it up late, and then Mattias Ekholm in overtime brings it home with the scramble, kind of on a platter pass, and ends up putting it home top shelf to win the hockey game 3-2. The Oilers, not an effort for a full 60 tonight, but against the Boston Bruins, good enough to win in overtime, and you love to see that from an Oilers team that desperately needed a victory, friends. I must say tonight's win, for me anyways, is a little bit more special than a just regular old 3-2 overtime victory against the Boston Bruins. Some folks in the house from down south tonight taking in their first Oilers game live at Rogers Place, and I'll tell you, knowing how this one turned out and knowing how the trip's going so far, it's a special time to be in Edmonton this time of year, and obviously being a part of that trip, I can only imagine what a win to start things off at Rogers Place this weekend means to them. So alright friends, let's get to this here. If you're new to the channel, consider hitting the subscribe button as the Oilers leave the ice, saluting the sticks to the fans here tonight. Definitely consider sticking around. We're going to have lots of Oilers coverage throughout the year. World Juniors coverage coming up here once Boxing Day hits. I guess there was a preliminary game I missed today, but as we go, the Oilers, like I said, a lifeless, and I mean lifeless, first period against the Boston Bruins. You needed so much better to win tonight's game, and somehow, some way, the Oilers, as they sometimes usually do when the big boys score big goals, still win the game anyhow. So for the Senators and Flames, where I've got some folks at that game too, tied 2-2 late in the game in the third period there now, but the Oilers, it was really a story of the Boston Bruins. They get a fluky one to start the hockey game, goes off a Draisaitl stick. Elias Lindholm, who you know scores all the time against the Oilers, scores again. And then Mark Kastelik with the power move with, Ty Emberson, just really bailed on the defensive effort on that one. Jeff Skinner came back, but if you're expecting Jeff Skinner to stop the much bigger Mark Kastelik, run that simulation a couple times and see how it works out for you in any kind of video game over the past 20 years. So that's where we're at. 2-0 after the first period, and the Oilers really didn't do anything offensively to help their cause. Got heavily outshot, it felt like, in that first period, and Boston really controlled the pace of play throughout the first period. The intensity level, the just everything about the game, Boston seemed to control in that first. And then Boston had some bright spots in the last 41, 42 minutes of the hockey game, including overtime. But after the first period, it really was a story, as it has been sometimes this season for the Oilers. They just start coming to life in the second period. It's been a story as old as time as an Oilers fan under Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. A sleepy first period leads to the Oilers roaring back by the end of the game. Well, Zach Hyman, you know him, you love him. He's got a broken nose, 2 black eyes, and he's scoring goals. His 11th of the season in that second period, halfway through, cut the game down to, obviously then, a 2-1 game, and that left some doubt for the Oilers fans going into that third period. You know, Boston's a stingy team. You know, at that point, Jeremy Swayman had been playing a pretty good game. He'd had a lot of good stops, and you figured, you know, he's going to do himself some favors tonight if he keeps stopping pucks and starts building a little bit more towards a good season. As they've talked on the broadcast, missing training camp didn't do him any favors. So that's where it looked like it was headed. Quite honestly, I'm sitting there in the third period, sitting there thinking, man, the Oilers just don't seem like they're going to score. Yeah, they're ratcheting it up shift by shift, but they always do at the end of the game. And you know, most of the time when you've really deflated yourselves early in the game, it ends in disappointment as an Oilers fan. Well, Connor McDavid found a way to bust through that. As we talked about, Zach Hyman from Leon Draisaitl in that second period. It's Connor McDavid from Zach Hyman and Leon Draisaitl, and to Chris Knobloch's credit, again, he knows that, well, this is an opponent that is stymieing everything we're throwing at him. Let's go back to Leon, Zach, and Connor and see what happens. And it turns up aces again. Almost did against Florida, but Zach Hyman obviously wearing that bubble is what Jack and Louie were saying might have been the cause for the Oilers being unable to tie it late in that hockey game against Florida. But the Oilers do indeed tie it late in this hockey game against Boston. Send it off to overtime, and when you've got, like I started off, that 8-game streak where the opposing teams won on the road, and it's the last couple of games there last season, both ended in overtime with the road team winning, so you kind of had that feeling nothing's secure yet, even though we're going to overtime and we forced it late. Well, Mattias Ekholm, after Leon Draisaitl stays on the ice, and when Leon Draisaitl stays on the ice, how risky of a maneuver that is for the Oilers bench, because he often gets caught back defensively and things end up going back on the 2-on-1 and back of the net against Stu Skinner. Well, that was not the case tonight. It ends up Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins cause chaos in the offensive zone 3-on-3, and then Nuge finds Ekholm on a pass that leaves him wide open with 75% of the net to shoot at. He roofs it, scores the goal, finishes it in overtime. And like I said, my friends from down south leave Rogers Place for the first time ever happy with an overtime win over top of it. Pretty high caliber opponent in the Boston Bruins, let's be honest. I'm not talking necessarily this season, but overall in NHL pedigree, it doesn't get much higher than the Boston Bruins at the end of the day, an original 6 teams. So yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. Stu Skinner, I think the big thing you got to talk about tonight is after 2 goals against, the rest of the way home, the last 43 minutes of the hockey game for him were pretty stellar. Honestly, for Stu Skinner, he stopped everything that came his way after the 17.5-minute mark of the first period, and it was just another one of those games that ultimately builds up his save percentage, ultimately builds up his goals against average. And you just love to see it for the Oilers. They kind of get the contributions from the big boys, and the game takes care of itself by the end of the night. You know what? One thing, too, that you have to credit is there was never really that big wow hit tonight. But in terms of the physicality, after that first period, the Oilers really settled in and really met up with the Bruins the rest of the way home. The hits end up 30-25, and I'm sorry if you watch this team in the first 25 games of the season like most of us did, that was not going to be the trend tonight. And, well, the Oilers instead chose a different route and got to that finish, which was a 30-25 gap in hits for the Oilers. So you like to see that. Face-offs against a Boston Bruins team, which is notoriously good at face-offs no matter who their centers are. They win the edge. But again, for the Oilers, they win enough to give themselves a chance every face-off, right? 31-25, whatever. You're close within a few percents there. And overall for the Oilers, they end up being capable of winning this one in overtime, which is the most important. And that is despite, again, I think, too, you go back to that first period. Jack and Louie were talking about it on the broadcast as well on Sportsnet, talking about how it was really a weird trend as the cold temperatures have set in Edmonton here over the past few weeks. The puck's bouncing on edge a little bit more at Rogers Place despite the great ice, and that led to the Oilers in that first period. There was a lot of bouncing pucks the Oilers were not doing good things with. 25 giveaways tonight, and you find a way to win in overtime. You literally outlucked your mistakes. That's the way it looks there, but the Oilers, to their credit, after the first period, did earn the victory. So, friends, thanks for being aboard here tonight. Appreciate you hanging out with me late on a Thursday night. For those of you that have the Friday before Christmas booked off, congratulations. Enjoy the upcoming 2 weeks off. I guarantee you've got 2 weeks off if you got tomorrow off. And we'll get to lots of World Juniors coverage, lots of Oilers coverage coming up here once things settle up on Christmas Eve at noon. Friends, I am up on out of here. Have yourself a great night. And like I said, on the top, play La Bamba, baby. We've got another W in the column.